So I don't know when the last time was that you had to plan a big family event like a wedding where you needed a caterer. But the scope of this miracle is really something to pause with. 5,000 men. Now let's say this was a family kind of event. So now you take 5,000 men and then approximate maybe there were 5,000 women there as well. Now today we would say that the average family has 2.2 kids. You know it was way more then. But let's just have a conservative estimate then. 2 kids. You take the men and the women and you add the kids and it's 20,000 people. Now, I don't know what caterers were charging back then, but this is fresh caught fish. And bread, home baked, that was the only kind they had back then. So, $5 a head? I mean, so the scope of this is just amazing. It was so much food and so many people. And the caterer's bill never arrived. All free, all given, all for everyone. My godson, Henry, who's watching right now, is 9 years old, and he's really into magic. And one of the things that's cool about being 9 years old right now is you not only get to see the magic tricks on YouTube, but then you can go and try to figure out how the magician did it. You can go and look at the backstory to all of it. And I think that that is a bit of what we often try to do with miracle stories like this one. The first place our mind goes is, how did he do it? How did he do that? But that's kind of a dead end for us because this is divine power we're talking about. We may want to go in the back room and see how the sausage is made, but we're not going to get it. This is all supernatural power. But I think what is interesting and important for us is to see what has resulted in the world because of this miracle. It shows up all the time. Many, many miracles have been spawned from this great one. Residents in the village of Koksaki recently got a letter in the mail that looked like a bill. Nobody likes a bill, so people probably weren't in a great mood when they opened it. But when you opened this letter, it was from the village saying, "We know a lot of you are having a hard time. We know that unemployment benefits are going to run out. We know that a lot of you who have small businesses or entrepreneurs, you are really struggling. And we looked at the books and we're doing okay. So we would like to not charge you this period for your water or your sewer bill. Take it as a gift from the village. Thank you for your continued support of our community." This was the last act of kindness by a St. Mary's parishioner, J.B. Ellis. He died the next week after this letter went out. But J.B. was a village trustee, and he went to the mayor and had this idea, let's not charge people for sewer or water. Now, that would have just been a nice idea, but he went there with a spreadsheet, because Joe was also a CPA. And he showed the mayor how it would work and how the math would work out and that it would not bankrupt the village. They would be able to do this and that it was the right thing to do. And so Mayor Evans said, all right, here we go. And that is how that happened. JB died the next week. He'd been struggling with cancer for 2 years, and we just had his funeral at St. Mary's on Monday. What was amazing was after all of this hit the news, the local NBC affiliate, Channel 13, came down to interview Mayor Evans. And they wanted to hear the whole story of how this happened. So he told them about how JB came. But the most important part of the story was what has happened as a result. He said, you wouldn't believe the hundreds of letters we've gotten at the village. And they've said all sorts of things. Some of them have said things like this. It's been a really hard year. And because of this, I can now buy a graduation present for my niece. Someone else said something that many other people echoed. I took the amount that my water and sewer bill would have been, and I gave it to the Humane Society, or I gave it to some other worthy cause. Some people said, here's my payment, and there'd be a check in the mail. Please put this to the account. Post it for the next person who, when the next billing period comes, can't pay it because times are still hard. Let this help them. Forgive their bill next time. The mayor said it was like this incredible cascading effect that just showered down upon the whole village. And I think that's because we have a faint memory that this is how God wants it to work, that this is how God made us. We have a sense that the dog-eat-dog way of living that we so often get into is not the way we were made. That's not how we were designed. And so we long for that. So every time we get a chance to participate in that, we want to be part of it. This is like what we heard in the first reading. Amazing, beautiful, beautiful image from God. If you are thirsty, come, drink. We've got more than enough. If you're hungry, come eat. There's no bill. You're not going to be charged. Just heed what's happening here. Come to me heedfully, God says. And I thought that word was really interesting. I don't use it much, so I looked it up, and it means to listen closely and follow, like heed this warning. So God is saying, pay attention to how this works. Heed this, follow this. This is what I want you to do. This is the way I want you to live. And it's the opposite of the looking out for number one thing that we so often get into. And perhaps the reason we get into it is we have a fundamental misunderstanding that there's not going to be enough, that God is not going to provide for us, that we are all fighting for the same small scraps. But this story tells us that there's more than enough in the scraps if God's a part of it. Back on March 16th, we had an emergency staff meeting. And that was because we had just gotten news that all masses were canceled. In the beginning, we said, this will probably be for 2 weeks. But we knew that the needs were great. It was, remember that time in mid-March when all of a sudden we were taking the scope and it went from being something on the news that was happening elsewhere to, oh my goodness, this is going to affect everything. So we had an emergency meeting as a staff and said, what are we going to do? Because none of the things that we normally do are going to work. No, faith formation isn't going to happen. We're not going to have our normal Tuesday night there's not going to be a Lenten reconciliation service. We're not going to be allowed to do it. What are we going to do? At that same time, there were some needs that we'd never seen before. Do you remember the toilet paper problem? Do you recall that? Just unbelievable shortages of things that we needed. It's kind of unbelievable that it got so bad so fast. But we sat in a staff meeting, and it sounded a lot like this gospel. In the gospel, the apostles say to Jesus, where are we going to find food for all these people? And our staff meeting, we said, where are we going to find toilet paper for all these people? So we started by just looking in our stash. We went to the rectory basement. We went to the supply closet in Cooksaki. We looked, and we had, because we buy in bulk, we had some toilet paper there. And so we took a bunch of it. Nobody told us to do this. We just figured it out. And we put it on the back pew of the church. And we got a sign made that said toilet paper. And then we made a big sign on an easel. And it said, we know that a lot of you don't have what you need. Please take as many rolls as you need and no more. And if you have over-purchased toilet paper because you got scared and you wound up, now you realize you have a shed full of TP, enough to last until kingdom come, just bring it. No questions asked, no shame, no finger pointing. Just bring the excess and put it on these pews so people who don't have any and can't afford any can get it. At that time, a parishioner had told me that they went on eBay to buy toilet paper, and they spent $14.99 for 2 rolls. That's what people were charging. Can you imagine? So We said, let's just do this for free. Let's let there be an exchange so that those who need will have what they need and no more, and so that all those who have too much can let go of that awful feeling that comes when you hoard. Hoarding doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel nice. It feels bad. We weren't made to do that. Do you know we never ran out? We never ran out. There was always more toilet paper on those pews than there was need. Every time I would go to see how it was doing, there would be more. Because that's how this kind of miracle works. And you may remember that back at that time, in March and April, the churches were in the news a lot. I was interviewed over and over again by the Ravenna paper, the Catskill paper, by the NPR affiliate in Albany, because they wanted to know what we were going to do for Holy Week. How are you going to manage Easter this year? But when they would interview me about what was going on at church, they wound up dropping the thing they called for completely because they wanted to hear about the toilet paper. See, they were amazed by that because they might not know what all of our rituals look like, what our liturgies are about. They may not have an understanding of the sacraments, but they know about toilet paper. And they know what it means to not have enough. And they know that when lots of folks were charging $15 for a couple of rolls to make a buck and take advantage of people's desperation, there were churches that were doing the opposite. Come to us heedfully. Take what you need, no charge. Just come. Be part of the flow of God's love and abundance. So that's the message Jesus has for us. If you want to see how life is meant to work, watch me, heed me, be a part of this. You don't have to go in the back to see how the sausage is made. You wouldn't understand anyway. Just get in the flow of this. Don't hoard. Give, and there will always be enough. That is a message that we can take with us for every day of our life.